Welcome back. You're watching a special edition of Media Week. We're taking an in-depth look at the news of the world hacking scandal and the global reverberations. Here in Australia, it didn't take long for calls to change our media landscape. We've heard those before, and there's already a review of convergence underway. But this time it's gone much further. Bob Brown wants an inquiry into not only ownership but regulation, including regulation of commentary. And now the issue of privacy and the strengthening of privacy laws has also been put on the agenda. The insinuation seems to be that News Limited, the Australian arm of News Corporation, needs to be investigated. This is what Prime Minister Julia Gillard said on Wednesday when she weighed into the debate.
There's been a major discussion overseas when people have seen telephones hacked into, when people have seen individuals grieving, had to deal with all of this, then I do think that causes them to ask some questions here in our country, some questions about News Limited here, and obviously News Limited's, got a responsibility to answer those questions when they're asked. And I would say if the boot was on the other foot and there was some major political scandal in the United Kingdom involving politicians, journalists from all newspaper stables, including News Limited, it'd be beating a path to my door to ask me all about it and what the implications are for Australia. So I'm really saying no more than what journalists themselves would view as proper conduct if there was a political scandal overseas.
News Limited Chairman and Chief Executive John Hartigan called the PM's comments unjustified and regrettable. In a statement, he said there's no connection between events in the UK and News Limited and no evidence that similar behaviour has occurred here. But he says if the Prime Minister has more questions, he's very happy to answer them. Let's see what our panel makes of the impact on News Limited. Joining James Manning and Mark Day is Barry O'Brien, the CEO of PhD, which is a global media agency. Gents, thank you very much. Mark, I just want to start with you just on this issue of News Limited. We've now had on Thursday morning the Press Council nominate the two judges which will undertake this internal review of News Limited's third-party payments. This has the full support of News Limited?
Yes, News Limited in fact has volunteered it and I think had nominated the judges, but that might have been the Press Council. But either which way, News Limited is very much part of it. Look, the Prime Minister seems to me to be on a fishing expedition, and there are others in America doing a similar thing. There is no evidence, and yet they say because of a family connection there might be. Well, we could all be hung for things that might have happened because we know people. I don't think the evidence exists, but okay, John Hartigan has said let's review editorial payments for the past 3 years. I heard him say, well, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, name your price. They are confident that there is nothing there, but they want to be able to demonstrate it and somebody independent to demonstrate it. I think the Prime Minister is playing to the gallery, trying to change the subject perhaps from the carbon tax, but in reality you can have all the reviews you like, but if there's nothing there, what's achieved?
Barry O'Brien, brand damage to News Corp properties. I mean, do they need to be on that front foot here anyway, just to come out and say, look, that we do things differently, it's not connected, or is there just no problem?
Just picking up on Mark's point in terms of the review that's going on, the fact that two judges have come in and it'll be an extensive review. I truly believe that's a very positive thing for News Limited. This is an organisation, this is a global organisation that comes into our living room every day. So it's a brand that we live with and have lived with for some 50+ years. So there is a tarnish there. We have to be realistic in terms of what's happened over in the UK has tarnished the brand worldwide. Now, within Australia, I think the things that News are doing, the way in which they're responding, the way in which they're acting is a very positive thing, and it's going to take time to be able to sort of rebuild the confidence. We're talking about a handful of people who have bought an organisation that employs some 53,000 people undone. That's what we're talking about here.
The way you mentioned that, I was talking to a stockbroker yesterday who was saying, look, the market is not necessarily, it's not going to judge this on morals. It's going to look at the value of the assets of the company and of management and where it will go to from here. My question to you, Barry, is I suppose advertisers in the same camp, are they going to be worried about the moral fallout of this, or will they just continue to go along and say, well, this is the number of people that this particular News Limited asset reaches and we want to be in there?
It's a really good question, Kylie, because a couple of weeks ago, when the whole thing kicked off, you had a number of pressures, particularly from the public, and they tweeted the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's and all of those brands to say, if you advertise this weekend, I'm not going to support your product. Support your organisation. The knock-on effect here is no, we haven't had that pressure because we're not in the same situation. But if they were found to have a scenario where wrongdoing had happened, then clearly there would be a lot of pressure. But if you look right across all of the titles in the UK, they've been affected in terms of daily sales. They've also been affected badly in terms of advertising support, and that will continue until this starts to settle down. So
is it something anecdotally that your clients have sort of raised with you?
No one's raised it.
Yeah.
No one's raised it.
Mark, I was just wondering, is it a bad time for News Limited or the media in general to be bickering with the government when it could get confusing for the consumer? I mean, if they're fighting over carbon tax or supporting the government, it can be sort of seen as, oh, look, it's another government versus media feud. It's a similar thing.
I think not. People see a separation. But Barry's point on brand damage is very interesting. You'd have to say that the most similar thing was Hardy Industries. Now, you know, Hardy's were on the nose with the public to an extraordinary degree because of their perceived inability or unwillingness to pay for the damage they'd caused through asbestosis. But at the same time, people, home builders, home renovators, were still out there buying their products and putting them in there, renovating their bathrooms and all that sort of thing. So there is a kind of separation between saying, ooh, I don't like that, and am I not going to watch the next episode of The Simpsons or MasterChef or whatever because of it. And I don't think most people go to that extent. They might have unquestionably, Barry's right. Their damage has been done, but for how long and how much, big questions yet to be answered.
You raised that point. You know, you name shows like The Simpsons and MasterChef, and probably the majority of Australians who are just going home and flicking on the TV are not going to be putting that together and thinking, well, I'm not going to now watch a reality show made by Shine, which is on the 10 network, because Shine is now owned by, you know, I mean, so we're not looking at this filtering out, especially in Australia, to all the other assets that news might have an interest in.
Not at the moment, no.
And at the end, if Rupert went tomorrow, whatever you've got News Corp without Rupert. And that's all those huge businesses in America which are spinning off billions of dollars. And, you know, that doesn't fundamentally change. If there was a change at the top of News Corp which said, righto, we're now going to divest so many of these properties that Rupert's accumulated over the years, I think the shares would go through the roof, and the value of those businesses being divested would be seen to be very much greater as individual businesses than they are collectively. So, you know, we've just got to keep very, very clear heads and a long view on this, because people, it's been 15, 16 days now. I don't think people are going to stress over the same story forever, and this will take a back seat. The inquiries will go on, the reviews will go on, the changes in corporate governments will go on, but I don't think they're going to be front and central to everybody's view of the world for very much longer.
There is a perception that the media like writing about them.
Spoken like a true News Limited person, yeah?
Well, I make the point that I'm
very clear, Barry, who's from where. We've got people from Fairfax coming on in just a minute.
But just on that, I mean, is this an extreme example of the media reporting on the media? I mean, the Daily Mail had an interesting headline the day after Rupert was in front of the House of Commons committee saying, look, why are MPs obsessed by this? Look, the euro's crashing. Yeah. Why aren't they talking about the economy?
Well, David Cameron made the same point last night. Let's put this behind us and let's get on with the real problems facing the country, including the European currencies. I don't know. These things have a life of their own, and it's a kind of natural life. It naturally explodes, it naturally recedes, and time will tell just when that happens.
I think this has got quite a life to go, actually, Mark.
I think it'll go on for years, but not at the same intensity that has been going on.
You've got to remember that this is the number one global media brand, okay? So this has got enormous interest from everyone, from the person on the street through to people like us who sort of, who live and breathe this.
More amongst us than amongst the people on the street. I think there's a great interest there, but not the intensity that you and I might have.
You need to check with my 85-year-old father.
Well, you said it. You said it yourself. You've had nobody saying I want to cancel my advertising.
Not at the moment. Not at the moment, because the whole thing hasn't blown up, and it won't blow up.
Hasn't blown up. I would have thought it's blown up.
No. But in terms of
you wouldn't want it to blow up much more.
No, but in terms of the UK, clearly it's blown up. The US, there's major pressure, and I would suggest that there's major brands got major pressure in terms of their ad agencies, etc., in those markets. Here, we're not under the same pressure because nothing's come out of it as yet.
Just one final question, sorry, for you, Barry, on something that may well flow out of this is, we're now looking at the potential for inquiries into regulation, into privacy, which could sort of, and into ownership. It could change the Australian media landscape if these things get up and pass by Parliament. It might be a long shot, but it could well happen. Barry, how, I suppose, would things like that impact your sector of the market?
I think the beauty of what we've got here is, yes, we are extremely well regulated. We've got freedom. We've got a business where it works, and it works very, very well. You see other parts of the world where it's so regulated, it's so controlled that all of a sudden you start to lose that freedom of the press, and that would be a very, very sad day in terms of changing from where we are to going right round to being sort of right under the thumb.
Mark Day, your phone going off, was that Rupert ringing to just tell you? Because we all know.
I'm glad it was you.
We have to take a break. I'd like to thank both of you very much for being on the panel.
Pleasure.
Good to see you. After the break, the shares impact, what shareholders and potential investors need to know. Is news a buying opportunity now or a stock to steer clear of? We'll be back in a moment.